Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome back to my channel, Retire Abroad Finance. My name is Martha, and today I want to talk about the health insurance that we bought to cover us while we travel overseas. I did talk about this in my video this past Thursday that I was prepaying some of my expenses, and one of them was our medical insurance. So, first of all, I want to start by saying that um, I did get my insurance for this next year, and I also got my insurance for my previous test trip through Warren Knox. And Warren and his wife, Julie Knox, have been traveling the world for a number of years now. And Warren is actually a licensed insurance agent. And so he has a channel, which I'll link below. They have a channel, I should say. I'll link that below, Warren and Julie Travels. They also have a Facebook community, which is a wealth of communication. I think there's about 20 or 30,000 members on that channel, and most are people that are already living the lifestyle that we're going to be living, where you've sold everything and you're basically just either an expat and you're living in another country in one place, or perhaps you're traveling. So there's so much information to be gained from people that are already having that experience. But like I said, fantastic resource. I highly recommend the YouTube channel, and I also recommend getting your insurance through Warren. It doesn't cost you any more to do that, and I'm not getting any referrals, payments, or anything like that. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that he's been tremendously helpful in answering my questions and my concerns. So to begin with, um, to get the insurance information and see what policies Warren is affiliated with, what groups or companies, um, you go to www.warrenjulietravel.com. I'll have that link below. So from here, you're going to click on Global Health Insurance right here, and you can see um, here are Warren and Julie. They've been traveling since March 2020. They do travel with dogs, so they have some really great information. If you're in that situation and you want to, live abroad, whether it's, in one place or travel, like we're going to be doing, slow traveling, um, with animals. It's a whole it's a whole nother ball of wax to travel with animals. There are requirements that differ from country to country. So they're a great resource for that. But anyway, you're going to click Global Health Insurance. Okay. And then you scroll down and you can see that he is a licensed agent with IMG Global Insurance, HGH Travel Insurance, Safety Wing Nomad Insurance, and then they have a few that are country specific, and then Cigna, GeoBlue, Genki, which people have heard about. I'm going to speak to Genki in a little bit. Genki has travelers insurance, plus they have insurance for people that are expat residents. Um, so First of all, I want to talk about the difference between a travel insurance and an international health insurance. Um, as I understand it, I am not an insurance agent. I am not an expert. Um, but to start off, my understanding is if you're going to take a trip, but your residence remains in the United States, even if it's a long trip, I would consider that to be travel insurance. Okay, so you're worried about um, getting sick. What do you do if you're sick or if you have an accident or if you need to be repatriated back to the US, that kind of thing. And very often the travel insurances, to my understanding, will also include like trip interruption insurance, if your baggage is lost, that kind of thing. Whereas an international health insurance is more like what we have in the US to manage our health care, um, but in another country. So, you know, all that. So when you look at international health insurance, you may or may not have, trip interruption or trip cancellation insurance or baggage loss coverage or anything like that. Some of these have them. I think you can add them on, but that's not really what I'm looking for when I'm looking for international health insurance. What I'm looking for is, you know, if I get sick, if I have an accident in another country, if I need treatment, maybe if well, let's talk about what I'm really looking for in real life. I need a new hip. So, if I want to be able to have coverage and be able to get a surgery and mitigate that cost, I don't know is if a travel insurance would work on a planned surgery. That would be a question for Warren, right? And I don't have that information. But this is more of a health insurance situation. Um, and so let's walk through that. So first of all, I went to the different sites that Warren recommended after I gave him our specific information. When I reached out to Warren, he asked me, the people that would be covered and the relationships, the ages, and, what country we were going to be initially launching from. And then I gave a lot more information because that's who I am. I I over I over explain. So he had recommended to me perhaps IMG or I think he recommended Cigna for our situation. Okay. So those were the two that I looked into. Now, on my own, because I knew they came out with a new product that was more for people in my situation. I think it was the Genki resident insurance, I think. On my own, I looked into Genki, and I've heard very good things about Genki, and the prices were very good. But I will tell you, part of my concern was that I had heard that if you are on a cruise, some of these insurance policies do not cover cruise medical care, period. And, you know, if you've ever looked into anything like this, then you would know that the cruise medical care can be the most expensive medical care that you may ever have, and you have no options when you're having it. It's usually something that comes on like you get really, really sick and you have to have medical care. And it's just incredibly expensive. And so I had heard that some places do not cover it. So I did reach out to Genki and I had a chat conversation with one of their representatives. And their answer to me was that they do not cover any cruise medical care if any of the ports on the itinerary are U.S. soil or territory. So that means if you are using repositioning cruises to get to or from the U.S., or if you're touching down even in like Guam or the U.S. Virgin Islands or something like that, you wouldn't be covered on your cruise. So, seeing as how we are using repositioning cruises as a travel method, Genki really wasn't going to be for us. And so I did confirm with Warren that the others that he had recommended covered us on cruises, and he confirmed that yes, they did. So I continued in that direction. Now, if you are going to, look into these companies based on what I've said, I would ask you to please also confirm that for yourself. Don't just go by what I say. As I said, I'm not a registered insurance agent. Reach out to Warren. He's more than happy to help. So I did end up choosing the IMG Global Insurance, and I'll show you how this whole process works. So I click into IMG Global. Okay, and then what happens is when it comes up, it's asking when will you need coverage. You could do a whole year. For us, we're going to be back in the US for a while, and we want to have US coverage, but we don't want to start it yet. So I did a partial year. So I did a start date of the 9th, and I did it all the way until we were back on US soil, which I think was around the 15th. Okay. So 249 days. So because it's not a full year, some things are not going to come up as an option for me. So I'll do another scenario in a little bit that changes the date so you can see what I mean. But I hit next, and then, where's our first international destination? Well, we're touching down in Italy. Okay. So then I move on, and now I've got who it is. So I'm 58. I'm a US citizen. My residence is the US. And then what's my official state is Florida. And then I want to add my spouse. Okay, he is currently 62. They matched all his information to mine. So that's fine. So I complete. So now it's coming up with a variety of plans and how much they cost. Some I would qualify for, some I would not. The student health I would not. For me, he had actually already recommended I look into Patriot Platinum for a variety of reasons. And I would recommend that you get with him, honestly, before you make any of these decisions, because he had some insight into Patriot Platinum having to do with, what age they ride until, how many renewals they'll do, blah, 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 blah. So he has all this information I don't have, and I'm not going to try to replicate it. So first of all, let's look at this Patriot Platinum plan, which is the one he actually recommended for me. For this particular one, the policy maximum is selected at $2 million, okay? And the deductible is selected at $0. What that will get you, it gets you up to $2 million in medical care, up to $2 million in medical evacuation. If I decide that I want to be evacuated from a country back to the US for medical care and I'm unable to travel on my own, they will take care of that for me. And then telehealth is also included. If you want to have this particular plan, the $2 million with a zero deductible, that means that they pay everything. It would cost you $4,457. That's not quite a full year for two people. So I think it worked out to 8 months. So that's 44.57 divided by 8 months. So that's $550 a month for two people at our ages. Okay, so we're older. That's actually not a bad deal. However, I don't want a zero deductible plan. I'm saying I'm willing to pay cash for some things, but I do want to have a backup just in case something costs more, and that preserves my retirement funds, in the event of some sort of an emergency or something like that. I want to take that premium cost down a bit. So here, I've raised the deductible to $5,000 with a $2 million policy maximum. And you can see that cut the costs in half down to $2,100, which means we've gone from $550 down to $267 per month. That I thought was absolutely fabulous. Let's talk about the 2 million, because you could change that as well. You could move it to 5 million or 8 million. If you move it to 5 million, it's only another $300. 8 million is 25.89. So that's not unreasonable. However, when you are working with a policy like this, if you are overseas, do you really need $8 million worth of coverage? That's something you want to think about. You want to look at the countries you're going to be in. You can talk to Warren about that. As I said, he is a very experienced agent. That was his career. I'm just going to show you how this all works. And then we're actually going to dive into the policies themselves, but I do want to show you how you actually process it. So you would click Buy Now, and then going to fill in your information, your coverage area. I said I don't need coverage in the US because we weren't coming back yet. My thought was to start a new policy May 15th that included the US, since we're going to be here for a few months. And then you're going to fill in your travel information. You go on and you arrange for payment. Now, if you pay all at once, you do save a bit of money, which was exactly what I did. I'm going to go ahead and fill this in. Okay. Okay, so once you're past that, okay, you can see you select your deductible amount, you select your maximum policy limit. I'm going to take it back down to the 2 million, okay? And then here on the side, you can see that it's going along with what you have so far. My cost would be $950 for that period. My husband, who's 4 years older, his would be $1189. Okay, I hit next. So here they start asking you about optional coverages. Do I want to enhance my accidental death and dismemberment? No, I do not. Do I want to add device protection? No, I do not. I have that on my credit card. And do I want to add adventure sports? This is, more extreme stuff, bungee jumping. No, just no. I'm going to be 59. No, I'm not doing any bungee jumping. And then you give your residential address. So I'm just going to fill this out here. Okay. All right, so once you're finished with that, you move on to next. And you review your plan information. You review your coverage duration, your coverage area. Don't worry if you're not just only going to be in Italy, that's fine. Don't worry about it. And then the travelers to be insured, they just review all that, the maximum, contact information, and the cost summary. So next, it's going to take you to a payment method. Okay. And it would ask you to complete your credit card and then you place the order. Now, you can choose to do monthly instead if you want to do that. Let's go back in again. Okay, so let's say that I needed to get a full year. Okay, so I'm going to go from September 8th to September 7th. That's as far as it will let you go. Okay, 365 days. Now I'm going to have a more conventional set of plans. I'll also have the Patriot Platinum plans. In addition to that, I will have the IMG medical insurance plans. All right, so now when I bring it up, you can see I have the Patriot Platinum, but now I have Global Medical Gold, Silver, Platinum, Bronze, um, and then various other plans that, as I said, I'm not really, I don't qualify for. So this is where I might still do the Patriot Platinum, or I might go over to one of the global medical plans. So one thing I really like about this site is that I can compare different plans. So I can compare the global medical silver, the global medical bronze. Okay, and you can compare up to 3 plans. So let's take a look at these. All right. So to begin with, like I think I mentioned before, I do want to take on a portion of the risk and lower my deductible. You'll notice that this is more of a upfront charge because we're going a full 365 days instead of 8 months. So let's bring this. So the silver and the bronze, what that really has to do with is the maximum that the policy will pay for. So the global medical silver goes to 5,000, and then you can move your deductible. I'll just keep it at 5,000, and then I can change my payment. Okay. So this is worldwide coverage. If I want to exclude the US, Canada, China, Hong Kong, Japan, there's lots of places here. So I shouldn't say lots. There's a few places, okay? Macau, Singapore, Taiwan. All that means is I can't get coverage there, so I will be a cash payer. So obviously, say I'm doing this for the next year when we've arrived back in the US, I'm not going to exclude US coverage. I'm going to do worldwide coverage, okay? And then I'm also going to reach out to Warren after I've reviewed the plan documents if I have any questions on whether or not I'm covered if something happens in the US, okay? But as you see, you can take the cost down by electing to not be covered in the US if you're not going to be here. So that brings you down to 43.94. Okay, so that's the silver plan. The bronze plan, policy maximum $1 million. Let's take it to my deductible again. And then I'm going to change my payment option to annual. And it's on worldwide coverage. So 41.79. Okay. Again, I can take that worldwide coverage off. And I'm at 31.75. Okay. So, let's say that you don't want to be covered for China and then you decide to do a trip to China. You probably want to reach out to Warren and see what you could do with that kind of situation if you can get a travel insurance on top of it, but for that one country. So, okay, so we have these all set up the same, and we can see the three different prices. So let's see, why would we go with the bronze, for example, when I can get more coverage for the Patriot Platinum for less money? So now we can scroll down and we can see exactly what they cover. Okay. Um, so you've got a choice of limits, which you don't have a choice here. They're set for you. Um, and then what you've got for deductibles. So at this point, you want to start moving through the policies themselves and figure out what best aligns with your own health outlook and the features that you want to have on your policies. You know what? Let's review what a deductible is before we go any further. So a deductible is how much you have to pay out of pocket for your costs before your health care will kick in. Now, in the United States, we have the ACA, also known as Obamacare, that basically regulated that certain things don't have to go through the deductible process, like if you're going to get childhood vaccines, um, if you are going for your annual wellness checkup, that doesn't go through the deductible. Those are covered already. That is not the case overseas. Okay. The ACA just covered the United States. So if you go overseas and you say, have my annual checkup, you're going to pay for those. So there's that. So that would all count towards your deductible. Now, how that works with these insurance plans, that the ones that I've gotten, you're going to go ahead and pay out of pocket, and then you submit the cost, the bill with the official documents to the insurance company, and then they either say, okay, we're not going to pay anything because you haven't met your deductible, but they credit it to your deductible amount, or they say, okay, yeah, you've met your deductible, so this is what we're going to pay you. So that's where you need to understand how your insurance works. Now, the maximums just say, okay, we're only going to pay you up to $5 million for this policy. So anyway, you want to think about where you're going to be. There's an argument to be made that if you're going to get a permanent visa in Thailand or Vietnam or someplace that has a lower cost, Malaysia has a lower cost medical care that's excellent medical care, like Thailand and Malaysia. I think Vietnam's getting there. Um, then maybe $5 million is overkill. Maybe you could do $1 million and that would be fine. But you just want to be educated about where you're going and what you may need. If you are going to be getting a resident visa in Japan or maybe Canada, then you may want to go to the $8 million. I don't know because I don't know the cost for those, but I'm just saying, do your research, talk with Warren, to figure out what's going to work for your situation. What we're looking at right now, we would probably just keep going with the Patriot Platinum. However, I would go ahead and get the worldwide coverage when I do renew for 1 year because we would be in the US for a period of time helping out with my mother. Okay, so let's talk about other things that you could do. You could either you could either pay for the Patriot Platinum plan and not include the US, and then get a plan through the marketplace in the US, where it's state specific and, you can go ahead and do that. If you keep your costs down, you could apply for those subsidies. You could receive a subsidy and you could get free health insurance for when you're back. Once you complete the process and you've paid for your policy, you will end up getting several documents emailed to you. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to see is you're going to see an email come through with a declaration of medical insurance. And from here, I can go in, I can grab our ID cards, which I've already done. But this is proof when you're traveling. Some countries that you're traveling into, in order to enter them, you have to have proof of medical insurance. This is proof of medical insurance. So you can also get a letter that is specific to my coverage. And I can take that to passport control if they ask to see that we have coverage. I have a confirmation of coverage letter and it gives the specifics. And I would need to do one for myself, one for Lou. Likewise, I would generate our IDs, one for me, one for him. And then we have all that available in our phone. You can add it to your Google Wallet, your ID cards if you want to, and then it's all there. So nice and easy, and I'm covered. So I hope that this helped you. As I said, I really recommend that you go through Warren Knox of Warren and Julie Slow Travel. Not only is he an insurance expert, but he is also a slow travel nomad and has been since 2020. And so he has a lot of experience on, how insurance works overseas, what you may need. He's very, very good and he's very quick to respond. But, I found him very easy to work with. It didn't cost me any more money than if I had just purchased it myself. So if you have any questions, please do reach out to him. This is just a video to explain why we did what we did and what kind of options that we found out there. So, this is what works for our situation. I'm planning on continuing the relationship that we have with Warren for our insurance so that I can make sure that as we get older, we can make the best decisions and still be protected for our health. Comment down below any experiences you've had, any recommendations you have, or if you have any questions. And I love the conversations that we can have in the comments. I appreciate them very much. And I hope this information was helpful. So if you do like this type of content, please do like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless. Bye.